all right, then there's another thing, right? And this is really unfortunate. Debate about Gaza in Parliament yesterday just descended into chaos. It's really an embarrassment, this. Calls by Labour for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza were approved by Parliament last night, but the decision was overshadowed by SNP and Tory MPs who had their own statements on the conflict and the demands of Israel walking out after accusing the Speaker of the Commons of showing bias towards Labour. And I know what you're thinking. You think this makes no sense at all. So let me just try. Follow me over here. And I'm going to try and explain what went on in the House of Commons last night. And this is not easy, OK? But let's do this, because actually what went on is quite simple. And I was watching all the websites, The Guardian, they're all... I mean, let's slow it down, freeze it. OK, let's just take this one player at a time. And I'm going to use 4 playing cards here. So let's just take 4 aces here. And each ace represents a person involved. So the first one is Stephen Flynn, SNP. What's their role? It's their debate day. They're actually at the centre of it. Penny Mordaunt, Conservative, her role, traditionally the government would supply an amendment to the SNP motion. Keir Starmer for Labour, he's worried. He's trying to avoid a party split. He doesn't want his MPs to vote for the SNP motion. And then you've got the Speaker. And I'm going to put question marks here because it's not clear what his motivation was. He's a former Labour MP. What was he doing? So the SNP have their motion. The government, Penny Mordaunt, supply their amendment. So far, this is custom and practice. This is what always happens. What has never, hardly ever happened before is the Speaker then says, I'll allow the opposition to have an amendment as well. By doing that, Keir Starmer has a get out because then he's done a watered down amendment and his MPs can vote for it and he avoids a split. But the SNP then go ballistic because they say, what's the point of us being here? This is our debate day. And they and the Conservatives walk out and the focus is then on the Speaker. What on earth was he playing at? And over 30 MPs have now called for Sir Lindsay Hoyle to get the axe. He ended up last night apologising.
I regret how it's ended up. It was not my intention. I wanted all to ensure they could express their views and all sides of the House could vote. I am, and I regret, with my sadness, that it's ended up on like that, in this position. That was never my intention for it to end up like this.
I mean, it is just a national embarrassment, this, Peter, isn't it?
Politicians go on the telly, and when they're asked why they went into politics, they say, oh, because I wanted to do good. Well, actually, that's a bit of a lie. They went into politics because they were too ugly and too talentless for show business. but what they actually do is they tell us all the time they wanted to do good. Yesterday, the House of Commons had the opportunity to come together and send a unified and clear message. But they didn't because their egos and their self-interest got in the way. Shame on the lot of them.
What do you think, Yasmin?
Couldn't improve on that one bit.
You didn't like the Labour motion. You would have rather go with the SNP one. The SNP one was tougher.
I wanted the SNP one to go through, but actually what's happened, you watch these scenes and you think, at that moment, intensified attacks were being mounted in Rafah, which is the size of 2 airports. And here are these guys, for their own interest, as Peter's very eloquently said, for their own ambitions, failing utterly to do the decent and grown-up thing. I couldn't sleep last night. I was so upset. I mean, you remember the time I was saying to Peter earlier when we used to laugh at the Russians in Parliament when they would duffed each other up and shouted at each other, and we thought we were so superior and civilised, where we saw how civilised we are.
It's a real shame. It's a real embarrassment.
And actually, the person I'm most cross with is Starmer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because he was doing something to get himself out of trouble.
Yeah, that's all he's interested in.
Because in the end, what I would love is...
He has no... As far as I can see, he has shown no interest or compassion for those people in Palestine.
Well, or spine.
He's trying to
or
avoid
spine.
on his side. He's trying to avoid a split and all that. However, that's
It's
politics.
not about our politics. It's
I
about
know,
the dying.
I know. And what we would have rather been doing today is showing you 4 or 5 clips of very powerful speeches for MPs who are saying this or something like it. Instead, we've just got another pantomime. It's appalling. OK, after the break.